Cybersecurity Mentoring Group weekly masterclass. Today, we're continuing with identity and access management, understanding identity security using a multi-framework approach. We actually had a first one not last week, 2 weeks ago with Ayokumi, and it took us through the governance process and laying a solid foundation on identity and access management. What I will do is I will create a playlist and add this to the last recording so that it can be a continuous session. So the first one is on governance. This is exploring how to understanding the implementation using multi-framework approach. The class is probably going to take about 45 minutes. So I maybe not able to take questions, but I will be glad to respond to questions at any other time. And you can find it on our YouTube page when I upload it. Basically, the objective is to just provide some understanding on identity security, particularly on the principles of identity management as documented in different cybersecurity framework. I have particularly selected seven cybersecurity framework, or some of them are basically control framework. And I chose this particular frameworks because in my research and also from the publication we had in sought after cybersecurity certification skills and competencies, there were cybersecurity framework and ISO 27001 NIST, and the rest on the list came as sought after amongst others. So I thought that we could leverage them to explain identity security. But there are many cybersecurity framework, and I think access management or identity security is something that you will find in almost all the frameworks. All right, so we will be looking at leading practices and talk about the challenges of implementing identity management. We will look at what exactly is identity security, its importance, and take a look at the cybersecurity frameworks and the components that speaks to identity and access management. And then we'll look at those components or the key identity management concepts across the framework. And then we look at implementation challenges and best practices. So first is going straight right in is to ask the question, what exactly is identity? And one way I would look at it is to break down identity into the two words that make up identity, which is identity and security. Again, if you pick many resources, you probably find different definition of identity. And I have just tried to put up something that I think would be more generic, and looking at identity on one side and security on the other side. The first part is looking at identity, which really is something unique about, it could be a person, it could be a system, it could be an application, it could be a device. So something that is unique and kind of distinguishes an object or an entity from another. And identity forms or is a foundation of authentication, authorization, and access control. Maybe as some people call it, the triple A principles So identity is actually the baseline, because it is identity that you are trying to authorize, is identity you are trying to authenticate, and also is identity you are trying to account for. So that's the triple A: authentication, authorization, and accounting. But security is as generic as the protection of assets, information assets, or general assets, and individuals from threats or risk or harm. Now, there are different identities, different form of identity. An identity could be a person, a user. Basically, human beings are identity. A machine could be an identity, which is, maybe your laptop, your desktop, whatever. They could be your mobile phones, your smartwatch, and all of that could have a unique identifier. They are non-human, but they can be identified. And all of these elements are features of our identity. So identity could have privilege. So whether they are service accounts, admin account, root account, but they have a privilege more than every normal account or every normal user account. Identity would have a life cycle, meaning that you will create it, you will create identity, you will modify it, you will then end that life cycle. And Ayokumi spoke about the GML process, which is the joiner, the movers, and the leavers process, which manages the life cycle of an identity. For instance, a human being joins the organization, moves around from one department to the other, then eventually leaves the organization. Then you could have with identity verification and authentication, and the same way you could have federation and single sign-on, which basically speaks to the ability to use an identity across multiple, maybe multiple federation units or federating units, or multiple departments. For instance, if a federal government with ministries could allow a user in one ministry to be able to use the identity in another ministry. Single sign-on talks about using one identity to access many resources. So you have your ID, username, and password, and that username and password can access the same username and password can access multiple resources on your network. Single sign-on. Once you sign on one, it allows you to be able to also use others. And some depending on implementation, you may be asked maybe every 4 hours or so to re-authenticate. Again, if there's zero trust implementation, you would have to do that every time. There will not be a memory of whether you sign in earlier or not. In fact, if your behavior changes, you will be required to sign in again. Now, when you're talking about identity security, which again is known as identity access management, there are 3 basic components. There are policies involved, there are technologies involved, and there are processes involved. So you use the policies like the governing rules, the whatever that guides the behavior of the systems, of the identities, will be policy. Technology and the process. The process is the way people then behave or do things. So the right of people, ensuring that the right people have the right access, right resources, and at the right time. Ensuring that unauthorized users are not able to access system, and also that you do not just grant people access without ensuring that they are doing what they are supposed to do. So in this case, you are not assuming that you have allowed somebody into your house and they are supposed to be in the sitting room, and they will stay in the sitting room. You want to make sure that you have allowed them to go to the sitting room, but they are not trying to enter your kitchen or your bedroom and all of that. And all of these can be guided by identity security. Now, why is identity security critical? Why is identity security critical? I was looking at the Verizon data breach incident report of 2024, and it's available online for download. Said 81% of data breaches are caused by compromised credentials. 81%. So it means that out of 100 breaches, 81 of them is traced to compromised credentials, compromised identity. So I think that's enough reason to pay attention to identity security. Ransomware and phishing attacks, they often exploit weak identity and access management practices. Also, because of COVID, we got to find out that I can work from home after all. So why am I going to the office? And again, that allows organization to shield some costs. In fact, I remember at some point in an organization I worked for before, I was asking the guy in charge of the admin guy, and he was saying that formally there's maybe about 80 what's it called now, dispenser, this can that they put on dispenser to dispense water. 80 of those cans are used. I can't remember whether it was daily or every 3 days in the organization. 80 of them. And you can imagine how much that would cost the organization in a month. But with COVID and remote working, where people can stay at home and choose not to come to the office, then it said that cost actually reduced, significantly. Now, there are implications. So on one hand, you may want to save costs. On the other hand, is that you have opened up another risk of allowing people to have access to your infrastructure from the comfort of their houses, and you don't really know what's going on. So it's telling that 81% of data breaches are caused by compromised. And that's why it is critical. I also came across this, and I thought it would be very good. The source of the publication is down on the link, and the Verizon data 2024 data breach investigation report also is available online for download. I was just looking at this and looking at the top, the ones in the I region is Microsoft, New York Times, Change Healthcare, and AT&T. And you can imagine these are not small organizations that you would think they should know what to do. But these are huge organizations, and the impact of these, some of them millions of data compromised. I think one of them actually paid. And I think, yeah, on the next slide. So these are the top 3 in 2024. The number 3 is the one that has to do with Microsoft. So I have highlighted in yellow the weakness. So first is the utilized password spray. Password spray is, like you're spraying password, whichever one goes, to attack a particular maybe a target. Now I said the threat group known as APT29, associated with the Russian SVR intelligence service, utilized password spray attacks that successfully compromised a non-production tenant account that did not have multi-factor authentication. And that's the weakness right there, multi-factor authentication enabled. So They then leverage this account to compromise a test auth application that had elevated access to the Microsoft corporate, and the rest is history. The second on the list is the Change Healthcare, and the same thing said the attacker used stolen credentials to breach the company's Citrix remote access service, which did not have multi-factor authentication enabled. In fact, I saw a publication that says if you implement multi-factor, almost over 90% of your risk is mitigated with multi-factor authentication. The number one data breach is 165 organizations around the world were targeted using stolen credentials gathered from stealer infections dating back to 2020. Maybe it's COVID. The impacted accounts lacked MFA, meaning successful authentication only required a valid username and password. And again, so a password is no more the showstopper. Either people are lazy to use very weak password, and if you there's an Excel file you can download that contains about 15 million. There's one 15 million, there's another one 4 billion passwords, common passwords that you will find and be surprised that people use 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 9 as a password. Some people just use 1, 2, 3, 4. Some people use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And anytime they want to change their password, they just add a letter. They just add a letter and keep increasing it because they are just lazy. And again, password change fatigue also comes in, where people are tired of changing their password. I remember one guy, and his name is, I'll just call his name ABC. So his password, the first one was ABC. The next time he was changing his password, he just wrote ABC, ABC. So every time he's changing the password, all he was just adding is another of the same. Another of the same. So he said he's tired of remembering that the password he used last month or 3 months ago. So he would just continue to say ABC, 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 ABC. Anyways, so this is just to tell and also to substantiate the fact that identity security is a very important element in cybersecurity, and also, little wonder, is one domain in the disciplines or in the disciplines of cybersecurity. Is also access control is also a domain in many of the cybersecurity certifications. Now, cybersecurity framework, what do? They provide you structured guidelines for managing identity and access management. Again, I think majority of cybersecurity framework, you will find IAM in there. You will always find it there because it is so fundamental. It is so. I was going through the UK, I think it's Cyber Essential Plus. You will find it there. The Australian has its controls, more looking like the same thing with UK Cyber Essential with 5 controls. You will find access control there. Name any cybersecurity framework or standards, you will find IAM there. That's how important it is. So what I have done is I want to look at IAM in 27001, which is the most popular information security or cyber security framework. Again, this is the best practice. It contains a lot of best practices in cybersecurity. Then I looked at also the NIST. The NIST 800, I don't actually regard it as a framework. I regard it as a control framework. And then I looked at the the cloud control matrix, especially for cloud services. Then the industry standards, I just categorize under the CIS control, 18 critical control, used to be 20, but it's 18. The current version is, I think, is 8.1. Then the NIST cybersecurity framework 2.0. Then regulatory compliance, I looked at PCI DSS for payment security, often using fintechs and financial services, and then high trust, often using health care. So we look at the different components of IAM that this frameworks provides for. So overview of the framework. Again, this is not about the framework. So we're not going deeply into the framework. We're just looking at a specific, we have a focus on each of the frameworks. So ISO 27001 is globally recognized. And apart from the fact that individuals can be certified to ISO 27001, organizations also can be certified to it. If part is one, ISO, not every ISO standard that allow you to set organizations to certify to them, but ISO 27001, you can certify to it, and also organization can certify to it, and it contains good generic guideline for you to improve your practices. The focus is risk based, actually. So sometimes you see people with ISO 27001 certified as an organization, and you may be misled into thinking that the entire organization is certified. So ISO made it simple that you can focus on an area, and that's a risk-based approach, which is that from all of my assets or this organization, where are my key business functions? I think I'm interested in that area. Some people certify their data center. So it's until you probably see their either certificate or statement of applicability that you know that, so this is really what it is. And that's why, as a professional, when you're engaging organization and they say they are certified, for instance, if you engage a hospital or engage a financial institution and say we are certified, it may be important for you to know, okay, what is the scope of this your certification, or this particular system that we'll be interacting with is in scope of your certification. Then you have the NIST. NIST is by US government. So the 2.0 was published, I think it was in August last year. So it's the same with the 1.0, but the major difference is that they've introduced a governed domain. So before, they have it as identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. But they've said, we think that we need to govern first. So they introduced a governed domain, which essentially picked the governance aspect of respond, protect, identify, and lump it up in one, and then introduce some other, and then they delete some other from other domains. So you will find, I think it's about 22. Yeah, anyway, I'll show you details about it. Then you have the CIS control. CIS control used to be 20, but it's now 18. And you can find also this from the website of CIS security. And then we have the cloud, mainly for cloud service providers. Then you have iTrust, and you have PCI DSS, and then NIST. So all of these, like I said, even though I've called them framework, personally, I do not think that they are all framework. I think that some are control framework, like the CCM is a control framework. The NIST is a control framework. It's not really a cybersecurity framework, but generally they are regarded because they, from here, they provide you a structured guidelines. That's the beauty. That's what I'm taking away from it. That you have some kind of a structure in terms of how to implement or how to make sure that you are secure. They have a structure. So that structure is the beauty of the framework. Yeah, so ISO 27001. Again, if you are used, some people are not aware that things have changed in ISO 27001. The 27001 213 is different from the 27001 2022. So it's important that you know that the framework has changed from 2022. There's a new thing that is expected to happen. Organizations are now recertifying to 20. At some point, they had to stop certifying to 27,001 2013 to now redo a reassessment and then go to 27,001 2022. Now, apart from the normal sequence of ISO framework where you have organizational concepts, context, where you have support, operations, monitoring, and things about leadership, training, and all of those things. The annex, which is Annex A, now has 4 controls. You have the organizational controls, people controls, physical controls, and technology controls. What I have done is to look at this, run through the framework, and then identify the element of that control that is speaking to identity. Because in understanding identity, different framework, permit me to use just the word loosely framework, they somehow focus or have strength in different areas, right? It also doesn't mean that if you use one of the framework, you are not going to be fine. But somehow I think they enhance one another. I believe that where maybe ISO 27001 is weak, it could be CIS control that will be strong. And then you can leverage one another to strengthen your control environment. So what I have done is to look at the different points at which directly or indirectly identity is referred or is used. So for instance, in segregation of duties, essentially who you are going to be assigning that segregation to is an identity. So it could be one person cannot, complete a process. Let's have a maker and let's have a checker. Let's have an asker and an approver, something like that. An asset is an identity. So for instance, I mentioned earlier about joiners, movers, and leavers, which essentially manages the life cycle of employees when they join the organization, when they move around the organization, and when they leave the organization. So returning of assets, somebody that is leaving the organization is returning the assets. There's identity involved. If I go to screening, there's identity involved. Physical entry, there's identity involved. User endpoint devices, privileged access. So you can see all of these, that in one way or the other, identity is at the center of implementing the control. When you are going to apply the control, you're either going to apply the control to a system, a device, a person, or a service, or even data. So identity is all involved in each of these elements. The same thing goes to NIST. As I mentioned earlier, NIST now has 6 domains. Initially it was 5. So the govern element has come into play. So you have 6 functions from govern to recover. So you govern, you identify, you protect what you have identified, then you dictate, then you respond. So even though you have protected, things can go wrong, but you need to have capacity to dictate that thing. When you dictate it, what do? You don't fold your hands, you respond. Then you recover to your true state and you go back to govern, or like that. And it doesn't have to be sequential. It can be from govern to recover. Now, you have categories. This category, I think they're about 22. So I typed 22 here, but there are 22 categories. It means govern will have 7. I think recover has 4. Identify has 5, on and on. Then you then have subcategories. Under the subcategories, you then have govern with, for instance, maybe risk management, and with risk management and with its children. Then after this, so after the subcategory, there's another part which is the implementation examples. That's about 357 implementation examples, which I'm going to show a part. But what I've done is just to focus on the IAM element. So this is just simple explanation of the govern and the rest. But this is where I'm focusing. I just looked at which of these category or sub-function or subcategory will talk about identity. And I saw 80 implementation examples that speaks to different principles of IAM. It could be least privilege, it could be multi-factor, it could be accounting, it could be zero trust, it could be segregation of duties and all of that. So 80 of the 357 examples, implementation example, speaks to this identity. And from govern, ideally, when people look at the framework, in fact, from here, when you look at the framework from here, because we are dealing with identity, people might just focus on identify as where you will find identity. Well, true, you will find identity a lot in identify because you need to identify something, right? But trust me, identity is not limited to the domain identify. In fact, what are you protecting? You're protecting identity, actually, whether human identity, machine as an identity, information as an identity. So you have identity across. I am also sure that identity will be under respond, right? I'm sure that identity will be under respond. And you can do a simple search, right? Without reading everything, you can do a simple search of looking at the keywords that I shared earlier in identity, either single sign-on or verification or authentication or machine or user, just use those words and search the framework. You will definitely find a lot more than this 80. Now, I isolated govern and I look at the categories. So there's govern, organizational context, which is GV, govern, then organizational context OC. Then the example, implementation example says, create an inventory of the organization's dependencies on external resources, facilities, cloud-based and hosting providers, and their relationship to organizational asset and business function. There is no way that you will create this that identity will not come into place, because your cloud hosting or cloud-based hosting providers are hosting some form of identity, whether it's servers or whatever they are hosting for you or devices, the identity that you need to protect. So understanding them is very, very important. And then you can also see supply chain risk management that is also involved. Said assess the authenticity, integrity, and security of critical products prior to acquisition and use. There is no way that identity will not be involved in this. Now, moving on, This is the CIS control. The same thing. So in CIS control, the 18 controls, I just look at the first two and the 5 and 6, account management and access control. They will jump at you as though they are the one that contain identity. But much more than that, you will find identity even in maybe service provider management or application security or even penetration testing. But the beauty of CIS control is that they actually also talk about the asset type. So devices, users, network, applications, they've identified all of those as elements that controls are then applied to. But moving on to what aspects that you will find identity, again, do a search. The first one is 4.7. 4 is about secure configuration of enterprise assets and software. What is it saying? It says manage default accounts on enterprise assets and software. In fact, in some framework, they will tell you change default account, change their password, or don't even use it at all. That's identity at play, because default accounts, sometimes security by design, security by default, they are not built into some of these solutions when people buy them. So everybody knows that the default account on devices is generic. So why keep using that account? You'll be shocked that a lot of routers will still have the name of their manufacturer as their default account. It's there. Again, it will be some kind of break glass, which is in case anything happens, that's one way for us to get in. But the same thing, an attacker knows that likely devices will have that, so they can use that to create a foothold on the device. You can see ensure authorized software is currently supported, address unauthorized software, ensure that authorized software is either removed from use on enterprise assets or receives a documented exception and review monthly. So these are different elements of IAM that you will find in CIS. I'll move on to sorry, this is not supposed to be this. This supposed to be I trust, I think. Yeah, this is supposed to be I trust. Let me make that change because I'm uploading this. Let me make that change. This is supposed to be I trust. I trust is said to be like they jumbled a lot of cyber security framework requirements into theirs. Yeah, I trust incorporates the security requirements of the following sources, from ISOs to COBIT to HIPAA to NIST, but they have some and some 19 domains, and 9 and 10 will jump at you because it speaks directly to identity. But number 2, endpoint protection, is an identity, right? For mobile devices, identity, portable media security, the identity is involved. So don't look away from domains that don't look like they would have identity requirements. Now, I saw this LinkedIn post and it looks very good. I think the guy has some series on high trust, which I recommend that you can look at it. It looks good in my view, and you may be able to get one or two things there. So this PCI-DSS, 6 main domains and 12 requirements, and popular PCI-DSS deals with identity. Identity that, for instance, a PAN deals with an identity of someone. So they have specific requirements that, in fact, if you look at your your card and the receipt you get from maybe transactions, you will see that your card is protected somehow. The last 4 digits probably will be out. Then the first few digits will be out. Yeah, because of people's experience in card. Did they know when they see a particular card, whether it's Mastercard or Visa, they know that they start with a particular number, 5 or 4. So that's an identity, either identity of a brand of an organization. Then when you go deeper into the middle, so the first 6, according to PCI DSS, there are 6 digits in the middle that should never be seen. In fact, that's what people who should have solved, that's what they look for. When you have your card, to get most people don't take their receipt from the purchasing point. They abandon it. So they can easily just focus on the middle digits. And before you know it, some of the CVV and the rest, they are not things that are difficult. People are careless with cards anyway. And what is CVV? Just 3 codes. What's the expiry dates? 4 digits. Those are simple. But the 6 digits in between is what people protect, and that's a form of identity protection. That's why masking is involved and hashing is also involved. So here you have access to display of full PAN and ability to copy is restricted. That's an identity security that is being implemented. Access to multi-factor authentication is implemented to secure access into the cardholder area environment. Is clearly identity. Physical control, manage entry into facilities and systems containing cardholder data. Physical access for personnel and visitors is authorized and managed. All of these are basically dealing with identity. The next, NIST 800 is also dealing with identity. So in fact, I think in my view, I may be partial towards NIST. In my view, NIST may be the best framework, loosely framework to go consider when you are dealing with identity. NIST may be your best framework. It's very granular, very granular. All of the principles that I have seen for IAM, you will find them in NIST 853. You'll find them in NIST. So I encourage you, and again, it is not only the domain, either access control domain, audit and accountability domain. I found related areas in security, system, I think it's SA's system and service acquisition. I found it there. So it is something to look at. Again, if you look at personnel security, you will find identity there. And this is access control. Access control talks about account management, access enforcement, information flow, separation of duty, least privilege, unsuccessful log. There's a lot of it. It's 25. Then you have identity, you have identification and authentication. That's another that deals with identity directly from the name. And then you have audit and accountability, deals with also identity. Then this is, gosh, I did not did this one too. So let me change it. This is cloud control matrix. Yes, cloud control matrix. Cloud control matrix as I think it's 17 domains. 17 domains. And immediately you will see identity and access management. Again, I am saying that identity is so important that there is no cybersecurity framework or control framework that can survive without identity. Excuse me. Yeah, there is no cybersecurity framework that can survive without identity. So you'll find identity in You find it in human resources. You find it in data security and lifecycle management. You find it in identity and access management. You find it in logging, and you find it in endpoint management. You find it in, you find user identity in almost, as you search for it with that keyword, you'll find it there. Now, what are the key IAM concepts across the frameworks? So I just listed 20. There are likely more than 20, but I listed 20 that are common. From least privilege, which is my case study for this presentation. I think I'm running short of time now. I'll be very fast so I can finish it. I don't want it to be more than 45 minutes. Now, this is least privilege. Users and systems should have the minimum necessary access to perform their task. Up to zero trust. Zero trust is do not trust anyone, even though I've authenticated 5 minutes ago. My behavior is that I check 3, my learned behavior is that I do not use more than 5 applications. Then suddenly I'm going to another system that I have never even touched in the last 30 days. The system with zero trust architecture should ask me to verify, even though they know me. So it's a question of we are blind to who you are. We want to make sure you are who you are at every time. If your behavior changes after you have been authenticated, zero trust kicks in and says, may we know you? So multi-factor is there. Identity federation is there. Privilege access is there that is popularly called PAM. The governance and lifecycle management from joining to leaving, the access review, single sign-on, all of these are principles that you can find in the respective control. Now, sometimes you may not find all of this in one control or in one framework, and that's the beauty of the multi framework approach, is that you can use one to strengthen the other. You can use one that doesn't have something to strengthen. Of course, you can have your primary framework, but you can use others to support yourself. So I have highlighted 3 and say, let's assume I have a responsibility to implement least privilege, multi-factor authentication, and privilege access management. Again, technology, all of these things are implemented by technology. But it's important that you understand IAM, because technology is just a tool. If you don't understand IAM and you go deploy technology, you will be, how do I put it now? You will be deriving the least benefit from that machine, right? So you need to understand the principles of IAM, understand identity and access management, understand the principles, and then understand the tools. In fact, it's not every tool that can even implement some of these principles. So you need to know the tool, and you need to know the tool that can help you implement the principles. So what I have done is to say, let's assume I have a project and I need to look at least privilege. Even maybe not a project, I want to do some personal development and I want to look at least privilege, or I want to look at multi-factor authentication, and I want to take a multi-framework approach. What I mean is I want to look at what does ISO say about least privilege? What does NIST say about this privilege? Sorry, I saw a mistake on that NIST. It's supposed to be NIST, not NIC. What does NIST say? What does Cloud Control Matrix say? What does PCI DSS say? Now let's dive in. So this is ISO 27001. Again, please note that you may not find it directly if you are searching for least privilege, some of them you may not be able to find it as that was. So you need to really look at the controls. But you will find least privilege principles used in the technology control 8.2 and 8.3, which is privilege access right. The allocation and the use of privilege access right shall be restricted. Again, this is, some people have problem with NIST. They said NIST, sorry, not NIST, ISO 27001. That NIST gives you some kind of, how do you want to achieve this? Shall be restricted and shall be managed. How do you want to do it? That's NIST for ISO for you. How do you want to achieve restriction? And how do you want to manage it? It is how you want to manage it. Make sure that you understand the objective and you can achieve it however you want to achieve it. Then there's information access restriction, which is access to information and other associated assets shall be restricted in accordance with any policy that has been specified, right? Then we go to NIST. Sorry, I'm seeing NIST again, seeing it as a NIC. All right, so in NIST 2.0, CSV 2.0, it is under the protect. So what I picked is privilege, least privilege is under protect, identity management, authentication, and access control, protect. Under that subcategories, you will find 4 implementation examples, right? 4 implementation examples. The first one talks about reviewing logical and physical access privileges periodically whenever someone changes roles or leaves the organization. So the element here is when someone changes role. So for instance, someone may be in HR and he has access to a lot of people's folder. The person has now moved from HR to another department. That person does not. So you grant the person, you review, so your movers process should be able to kick in. Some people do not have that process where HR need to inform either the information security team and let them know that there's a change in the identity of the person that we hired. The person used to be in this department. He has gone to this department. Again, a well-documented user access matrix for every application that is used in the organization has who from what department can do what on what system. Who, the identity, from what department can access what application and what they can do. So some can be supervisors, some can be readers, some can be viewers, some can be whatever they can be. But someone in HR may have an admin right on maybe the balance scorecard or the performance management system. The person has left HR. Should the person still keep that right? No, the person should actually be relieved of that right, and a new identity profile for the person applied, because the person is no longer the person that was that we have. So you can be you, but your identity in terms of before the system has changed. So this least privilege helps you to be able to enforce that. Least privilege that you need to use, least privilege. Read-only is read-only. Don't give someone an admin right when they only need read-only rights. So take attributes of the requester and the requested resource into account for authorization. So who is the person asking? In fact, they have brought in, where is the person from? When is the person asking for this? You know, these are all metrics that help strengthen the least privilege. The least privilege. So if, for instance, someone is requesting for access on a weekend and the work is 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, you need to ask, you know, what day or time is this person asking for this thing? It doesn't look normal. So grant the people or identity the least privilege. The same thing applies to when they implement NAC. You know, this device is coming. It doesn't have some features. Please put them in a guest profile. until they are able to meet least privilege. Grant people or identity the least privilege they need to work. The next one I've gone to, sorry, be faster now. CIS control, user restrict administrator privilege to dedicated administrator accounts. Some people have admin account on their user profile, on their normal email account. That's disastrous, because if anything happens through phishing and that account is compromised and that account has admin responsibility, the organization is in trouble. Define and maintain role-based access control. User access matrix helps you to define a role-based access control such that based on your role, this is what you can do. It is not your role as in the organization. This is a function you are playing. If, for instance, the MD may be the most senior person in the organization, it doesn't mean that the MD needs an administrator's rights. No. If the MD doesn't need access to that system, it doesn't need access. You shouldn't just respect his position and give him the highest right. Then you have the cloud control matrix. Employ the least, so this is more generic. Employ the least privilege principle when implementing information access, system access. Then it goes on to NIST. I said, I love NIST because this 853 has 25 principles under access control alone. I just picked one of them, which is the least privilege. And under least privilege, you can see least privilege authorize access to security function, and it defines exactly what it's saying. Authorize, so non-privileged access for non-security function, network access to privileged commands, separate processing domains, privilege account, review of user privilege, prohibit, it's quite detailed. Then you have under system acquisition, right? System acquisition, I think that is in NIST. Give me a second. Sorry, this is it. System and service acquisition, yeah. Under system and service acquisition, there is least privilege, which is security and privacy engineering principle. Then there's also least privilege under developer security and privacy architecture and design. These are, again, it says require the developer of the system component or system service to structure security relevant hardware, software, firmware to facilitate controlling access with least privilege. This is more like building security by design into your development process. Now we have PCI DSS. An access control model is defined and includes granting access as follows: appropriate access depending on the entity, business, and access needs. That's this privilege. And I'll move on to what you can't find. So you have your least privilege principle that you want to implement, and then you look for the framework that you have chosen. Perhaps chosen 7. Then where can I find least privilege? How can I enrich my understanding of this privilege across different framework from different perspectives? Some of these frameworks are used more in some industries or in some contexts. So for instance, the cloud control matrix is used for cloud services. So the likes of Google, Microsoft, Azure, Amazon, they use the CCM very well. So that gives you how identity access management is managed in the cloud. For PCI DSS, for instance, payment security, it gives you an idea of how identity is managed there. So this gives you, if you're implementing an identity security and privilege, this privilege is a subject. Now this has given you a full resource to know exactly what you need to put in place to be able to make sure that people really have least privilege. Now, implementation challenges. Now, it could be, to be honest with you, it could be complex. Yeah, it could be complex because you're not only in your data center, you are now in a cloud. So you have identity working in the cloud, identity working in the environment. How do you marry both? together. So it could there could be complexity there. Then if you have not automated, that could be a challenge. Automation is a lot. Provisioning of users could be a lot for organizations where people resume like 40 at a point. Do you have to be creating them one by one? So it could be a problem. Then there could be a compliance body. Some of these standards or frameworks are audited. I remember an organization I worked before. I was in charge of PCI DSS certification and ISO 27001. In fact, about 5 ISOs. Annually, we have to get certified. So it could be a lot, and it's almost like, oh yeah, it's not that they're happening at the same time. They are scattered. They are staggered. Then the human factor, which I believe is the number one challenge that IAM faces, is the human factor. Is a weak password. Behaviors that are not, that could, you would be asking, how is this person able to do this kind of a thing? More like they are intentional, but sometimes it could be just be fatigue, and they just compromise the organization. Excuse me, there's something locking in. So what are the best practices for identity security? Adopt zero trust. Zero trust is not that easy, to be honest with you. Zero trust means people will become a little angry. Because before, if you come to the office and you are working and nothing is asking you to show who you are. Imagine somebody asking you to show who you are every 2 hours or every 3 hours. You can almost be be getting angry. So zero trust is very good because it really helps to limit how if by chance you get compromised, they can laterally move between one system to the other, because there is need for authentication almost at every time. And thankfully, if it's MFA, you have to provide that code every time. Again, automate. There are a lot of tools out there that you can use, and thankfully Microsoft allows you to register and learn some of their solutions. You register and you register as though you want to pay or you want to enjoy their service, and but there's a free trial for 1 month. So within that, you can learn some of this process. Then continuous monitoring, which really is an element of the adopt zero trust, user and entity behavior analytics, your device and you as an identity. There's a continuous check to make sure you are who you are, and what you are doing is what you're supposed to do. Then align the IAM with compliance and risk assessment. Again, everything has to be layered on risk assessment. It is not because the feature is there, then you want to use it. Make sure that it aligns with your organizational goals, it aligns with your compliance requirements, and there's an element of your risk assessment, which is align it to the critical asset in your organization, the critical services, products, and also the users in your organization. All right, this is the end of our IAM understanding. If you are joining us for the first time, or if you join us today, thank you. And if it's the first time, thank you. Cybersecurity mentoring is where I thought that professionals in cybers can share and also learn and connect with other professionals. We have a session every 2 Saturdays, so twice in a month we hold sessions. We've had January and February. Now we have had 4 sessions, and on the 8th of March we'll be having one. Coincidentally, the 8th of March is International Women's Day, so we'll be having a lady with a PhD in cloud security. come talk to us about the opportunity that are there for women in cybersecurity, and trust and hoping that you'll be able to join us by then. I must thank you for you guys. I've spoken to to everyone, but thank you, Oluboale, for joining, and thank you, Bami, for joining, and hopefully we'll see you again.